Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid, and I of course am Brigid Burke. And we are at the last day of May, which is kind of crazy. I've been doing this live stream I think since May the 2nd. I've been doing it every morning. Good morning. I've been doing this now since May the 2nd, and it's kind of interesting. I feel like it's been almost a full month, I guess, as far as it goes. But I've been doing these morning live streams. And it's interesting. It creates an interesting thing in my schedule in the morning where I'm getting up and kind of focusing my thoughts early, because some days I can sit here for a very, very long time, and I need to get myself organized and get moving on things. So I don't know. It's just been interesting having the mornings where I get up and I meditate, and then it's like, okay, now I got to prepare to do this in the morning. And this is another day, yet another day where they supposedly are going to be finishing working on my road. So I had to get up early and move my car again out of here because I don't want to be trapped when I have to go out later. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's been a rather, as I said, it's been a rather interesting week of a lot of this kind of, I'm going to call it Uranian energy, in the sense of the way that Uranus has the effect of like the tower. It kind of, there's a lot of stuff that's being shaken up, a lot of stuff that's being tested this week. So I've been trying to ride that wave, to continue to meditate, to stay in certain place, to try to kind of figure out what I'm doing and move myself forward in an intelligent way, you know. And good morning, Sam. I've had quite a bit on my mind, and it's just one of those very annoying things when you kind of know what it is that you need to do, but we were talking about with the body is just not wanting to cooperate with you. The body's in one mode and the head's in the other, and that's not the place to be. You don't want to be split. You kind of want to be working together with those kinds of things, and a lot of times that just means kind of like it's taking a leap of faith in order to kind of move beyond things. So anyway, that's my little ambiguous thought on that for the morning. And good morning, Melissa. So the thing I was going to talk a little bit about today is something that I do for people as a coach called the life path. And what the life path does is it basically, and I don't know, some of you, I don't know that anybody here has ever had that one, but it's something that I offer in addition to my coaching. And it's something that when people who have gotten it have said it's just been like very powerfully helpful in dealing with certain changes that they have. And basically it's something that takes a lot of time for me, because what I do, and I'm trying to actually rework the way that I do it right now on my site, is it's kind of a mega reading. So what it does is it focuses on Western astrology, it focuses on Vedic astrology or Hindu astrology, and also called sidereal. It's based on a slightly different system. And then I do what they call human design. Okay, I do a human design chart for people. And then on top of that, I will usually do certain kinds of readings. Now, when I'm doing these things either in person or over Zoom, which is usually the way I do them, because usually there's a consult to explain to people everything that I got, and it's usually about 2 hours. The one that I do online right now, I currently offer Reiki with it as well, where I do distance Reiki for people in addition to the other. Or when I was doing it in person, it was kind of an add-on in person, but I would do a certain amount of Reiki to kind of finish it up. But yeah, I may or may offer different options. I know there's a lot of people who've been asking me about if I could do things where there doesn't necessarily have to be a Zoom call, like, can I buy this and can you just send me a report or maybe a recording or something like that. So I'm also working on doing something like that, because I think if that's, some people, they just don't have the time to take out of their day and do that. Other people like that, they want to have that sort of face-to-face kind of experience. So I'm trying to expand that, do that either way. But what I end up looking for in the life path for people, because if people are in transition, it's one of the core components actually, and it used to be something I used to require before anybody started coaching with me. But now I'm like, well, some people, they're just saying, well, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. Maybe I just want a one-off session or this or that. And so I'm trying to accommodate what people need. But the life path focuses on, there's a couple of things that we focus on. So the person, depending on what the transition is, so if they're changing jobs, if they're making a relationship change, like a recent marriage or a recent divorce or a recent something, had a recent loss of somebody, then then that's going to be the area of focus where I look at those particular houses to see not only what went on in the birth chart, but also what goes on in the transit chart, because that's another chart that I will add in to see, okay, this is where you were at birth and this is where you are now. And one of the bits of information that I get out of there, I mean, obviously astrology can tell you a lot about somebody's personality and what they're like and so on and so forth. But the thing about the life path is that I try to focus specifically on things like the things that are the repeated patterns, the things that maybe in a lot of the energy that's been going on recently. And I was talking to somebody last night, and we were just talking about how intense the energy is lately. It just seems like I called her up and she's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so drained. There just seems to be a lot of upheaval right now. So it's really about trying to kind of, it's like getting the map out, trying to figure out where exactly you are in the middle of all this kind of stuff. And what the life path does is I look at where Saturn is in the chart in particular, because Saturn talks about some people, I try to keep it broad because not everybody believes in the idea of karma, not everybody believes in the idea of past lives, Vedic astrology absolutely assumes that that's the case. And I've talked before about how I believe in the idea of concurrent lives. Either way, whether you think of it that way or whether you think of it as ancestral kind of stuff, there is an area in the chart where it talks about, okay, this is where your challenges are going to be. There's also, if you look at the way that the chart is constructed, if you look at it's usually, the Western chart, or the tropical chart, is usually in a circle, right? It's got the 12 houses and, good morning. So you have 12 houses, and so you have the horizon line. That's where the first house is. So that's where the sun was, on the horizon at the moment that you were born, which is why your birth time is so essential, and also the place, because where the sun's going to be is also going to be dependent on where you are in the world. So you have that first house, and that first house has that's supposed to be defining what your personality is and how you present yourself. But interestingly, good morning. The bottom half of the spread, or the bottom half of the chart, I should say, is what's in descent. In other words, it's what's not above you. And then, of course, the top half of the chart is is the ascent. It's what's over you. So that tends to represent what you have going for you, and what's underneath tends to represent where your challenges might be. And it's interesting because the challenge houses tend to be having to do with, it's usually the first through houses like 1 through 7. So this has to do with personality, it has to do with finances, it has to do with communications, business, stuff like that, work, home and family stuff, ancestral stuff, and also children and relationships and things like that. Like that's all that lower part there. So those may be and again, depending on what the placements are, so if you have, say, a planet like Jupiter, that's a very expansive planet in one of the lower houses, it may be saying that, okay, there may be some challenges around abundance, for instance, or it may be wanting to expand and maybe running into obstacles. So, it tells you different things like that. Chiron is another thing that I always look for in one of these life path readings, because Chiron is what they call the wounded healer. We've been talking a lot about wounds and wounding in these morning live streams. And the thing about wounding is that this is the area where, when we start to have anxiety, okay, over and over again, it's the thing that kind of, it's sort of like a constant script that we might have that's usually inherited. It could be something that we think about from childhood, but it's a script that we end up playing out over and over again, almost regardless of what else is going on in our life or what the specific challenge is. And that's because Chiron in Greek mythology is a centaur, and he is the tutor or the mentor of Achilles, I think of Hercules, certainly, and then I'm trying to think, Chiron was a teacher of a lot of the great heroes, and I'm kind of trying to remember if Achilles was another one, but Chiron, yeah, he's the one that is the teacher. And Chiron is also the one who is a healer. He knows the art of medicine, and he knows the art of healing people. But Hercules, or Heracles in the Greek, during his labors, he's drinking with the centaurs, and they get very, very drunk and rowdy, and he ends up having to fight them off, and he accidentally wounds Chiron with a poison-tipped arrow in this fray. And so Chiron, being an immortal, he's wounded, but he can't die. So he is this wounded healer. He has this wound that he is perpetually dealing with, but things go on and on and on and on. And so eventually, I think the way that story eventually ends is that Prometheus swaps. They kind of swap. One's mortal and one's immortal, and they kind of swap. And then that way, Chiron is finally able to die. And then that's how that how that story ends. And he's finally able to be released. Excuse me. So in your chart, Chiron is actually an asteroid, and where Chiron is in your chart, and it tends to stay in one place for a very long time. Like you will see certain generations of people having a certain Chiron wound. That will talk about what the thing is that is like a trigger for you over and over again. So we always look at that too. For me, Chiron is in Aries. So when you have Chiron in Aries, you always feel like you're never doing enough for people. Like no matter what you do, it's never enough. Like that's because Aries, of course, is that very active, doing kind of energy. But the wound is almost like, well, nobody notices it, or people ignore it, or people dismiss it. My sister has Chiron in Pisces. And she has massive issues with religion, okay? Because Pisces is about spirituality, right? And about knowing things. But she has it in the 9th house too, so that has to do with traditional religion. And so she definitely has this thing very much against religion of all types. So I remember looking at her chart and telling her that, she's like, yep, that checks out. So although it's kind of interesting that she would have her chart done and not really be interested in that stuff. But it's a wound. Again, it's almost like a case of, well, gee, I'd like to believe in this, but I can't. So that's Chiron and Pisces. There's other examples, but this is another thing that we look at, because the wound may inform how you are managing certain things, right? How you are dealing with when different transitions come up, when you're faced with change and you have a kind of default response, I guess we could say. When you have that default response, then that aspect of the chart will tell you what is what your default response is, and then the question is, how do you heal from the wound, or how do you manage to get beyond reacting from the wound, right? So that those are other important pieces of the puzzle. So we have Saturn, we have Chiron, we have the placement of the houses, and then you need to look at planetary things. You need to look at certain conjunctions and how they tie together, and where they are in your chart is as important as what the planets actually are. Because some people freak out, like they'll look at their chart and they'll have like a whole clump of planets like in two houses, and then they're like, "There's no planets in my other houses. Is something wrong with me?" I'm like, "No, that's just how your chart is," and it happens with a lot of people. I'm actually surprised at how many people have that. But I also do the Vedic chart in this as part of this. But if you've joined late, I'm talking about my life path assessment reading and what it is, and just kind of explaining how that works and how that's helpful to people. And the Vedic chart is, it's 23 degrees different from the what we think of as the Western chart, which I said is basically, if you think of the first house as Aries, just a standard chart, not your individual one. But then if you're born at 0 degrees Aries is that horizon line. That's the point. So that's the point that all the planets are judged from, or all the house positions move from there. And so you have these house positions. So you have this now in Vedic astrology, it's different. It's based on the actual positions of the planets rather than some fixed point from 0 degrees of Aries. Aries in Vedic astrology, if you want to look at it as a sun sign, begins on April the 14th, okay? Whereas normally Aries would begin on March 21st in our system, right? So there's a difference, there's a shift in how those are. And some people think Vedic astrology is more accurate because Vedic astrology is about, because it actually is based on where the planets really are rather than some kind of fixed point. And I find Vedic astrology, the first time I ever had a Vedic chart done, and I don't know if I've spoken about this before here, but I had, my guru has there's professional astrologers who are associated with my guru. They call this Yotish, and sometimes they're referred to as Yotishi, the ones who shed light. That's what the term means. And the first time I went to Yotishi was back in 2003, I think. It's a long time ago. And 2003, 2004. And I remember I sat down with him, and he had done my chart because I had given him all the information, and he did something called a reconciliation to make sure my birth time was exact. Because in Vedic astrology, if you want to get into a level of real detail in your chart, you need the exact birth time. Okay, it needs to be perfectly on the minute. And I remember him, so he did that. He just did something that they called to make sure that I was only off by like 2 or 3 minutes. I think I was pretty much right on with the time that I'd given him. And then he looks at it and he says to me, I remember him looking at my chart and saying to me, "Oh," he says, I'm looking at your family house here, and he says, "Your father had pneumonia last month, didn't he?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, now mind you, I had no reason to talk about my father's sicknesses or anything with anybody, so it's not like I would have told somebody who would have told him, it wasn't anything like that. And he said, "Yeah, that's a karmic thing. It's going to start repeating in his life, and that's going to be, there's some karma he's paying off with this pneumonia." He says, but, it's good. He was talking about that. And see, the odd thing about it was my father was a man who never got sick. I mean, he worked for the Bell phone system for over 40 years and never took a sick day. He was just not, my dad just never got sick. It was just kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden at a certain age, he started getting pneumonia. He had used to smoke pipe and cigars and stuff like that. And then he finally stopped because he said, because he was very concerned about the fact that something was affecting his lungs. So he just quit. I mean, he never really was a real smoker. He was one of those, he used to chew on the pipe or chew on the cigar, which I know sounds, if we think about it now, it seems kind of gross, but that's what he would do. And so he just stopped. He just said, "Okay, no more of that." And I can't remember if pneumonia is actually what took him out in the end, because he had died in 2022. He passed away finally because he had all kinds of things. He had Parkinson's, he had kidney failure, he had heart issues, he had all kinds of stuff by the time and weirdly, I think his genetically colon cancer was the thing he had to worry about. That had nothing to do with his problems in the end, which was kind of interesting. But they said, yeah, the lungs are going to be the area. And you can also tell that from the chart as well. You can also tell areas where one might have certain weaknesses and so forth as well, physically. So so Vedic astrology is very, very detailed. And I'm not going to profess to be a super expert in Vedic. I know I probably have a intermediate knowledge of Vedic astrology. Some of the calculations and stuff, I would need the proper software to do it. If I had the proper software, I could. Right now, I try to work with a basic chart based on the birth times that I just pull up from ProKerala, and I go through that. But I look specifically at your birth elements of your birth chart, which are often quite similar to the tropical, but there are some differences because your ascendant's the thing that matters in Vedic astrology. The sun sign, they're just yeah, your sun sign. They don't. If you watch online, if you watch a Vedic astrologer give a forecast or prediction and by sign, they're telling you to look at it by by your Rashi or your Lagna, which has to do with your ascendant or your moon sign. Okay, so that's what's important. Your sun sign's actually not what's important in Vedic astrology. So it's interesting. It's a bit of a different thing. But the Vedic astrology also talks about things called the Mahadasha. So that tells you what it's called. I don't know if they say it Vimshotari or Vimshotari. I've heard it said both ways. But it's basically what planetary time frame you're in. So right now I'm in what they call Shukra or Venus. So within this, there's going to be certain things about expanding, financially. Potentially that would be a time for getting married. That would be a time for, that has a lot to do with that. If you are in Before that, I was in Ketu Mahadasha. Ketu Mahadasha is when you start, that's when I actually met my guru. That's when you start maybe focusing on liberation. That's where sometimes marriages will end and things like that, because Ketu is about releasing old karmas. So what dasha you're in is important as to what might be going on with you. I've seen people go through transitions and say, oh my God, everything was like this and now it's like this. And I look at their dashas and I was like, oh yeah, you just changed dashas. That's why. Because so the focus that you had then is now going to be a different focus. And you're not, it's not going to be, it's not things, not that it's bad, but it is going to be a change. And Vedic astrology also deals with something called Sarasati, which is a 7-year Saturn period where things can be really extra challenging. So you may feel like you're doing all this stuff and you're like, I can't keep my head above water. It may be because you're in a Sarasati period and it's challenging you to overcome or to do better or to do certain things. There's a challenge to release certain past or ancestral influences or things like that. Those are some of the key components that I look at in those charts. And I also look at something called the D9. The D9 is what they call the Navamsha chart in Vedic astrology. And that is basically, if you're married, then the D9 is it's like the spouse chart is what they call it. If you're not, it's generally a type of chart that focuses on your life after age 35. So once you're past a certain age, this tells you about where the direction. A lot of my clients may be 35 or older. If they're not, then it depends on the age. Like when I did my grandniece's chart, I'm obviously not looking at her D9 because, she's, a long way from 35. So it's basically kind of the second half of life predictor in a way. And like I said, there's other subcharts and so forth, but so I look at those kinds of things. And then the human design chart is again, it incorporates a lot of astrology into it, but I find that it's useful for looking at people's energetic levels, and also what their strategies would be for success. So, for example, a lot of people are what they call generators or manifesting generators in the human design system. And that's if you're like a busy, restless person and you like to be doing stuff all the time, then you're probably a generator or manifesting generator. I've had a lot of clients who are projectors. And projectors are people who are easily drained of energy. Like they draw, and I don't mean this like in a vampiric way, but they do draw energy from other people. It's like there's an energy exchange that goes on there, but they're reliant on other people. So if those people have very, very responsible jobs, I remember there was somebody who I worked with years ago who was a projector, who was like a vice president of a company, and I'm like, oh my God, and it was a major company too, and I was just like, wow, this is definitely, because this person was like, yeah, I'm exhausted all the time. They want me to be up and available to take calls at 2 a.m. and there's no way I can do that. And I'm like, no, and there's no way you should do that, because it teaches you about what your energy level is. And then there's people who have been just struggling with certain things, and sometimes just knowing where you're at energetically and what your what kinds of things, where you're open. And human design also talks about where you're vulnerable to outside influence. Okay, because there's places, they have these things called these gates, and you have certain gates that are active in your chart and certain ones that are not. So the ones that are not active are the ones that where you have to be careful that, well, you need to be aware that people can influence you from the outside. Like it might not be you in your decision. It might be more that you're easily swayed by somebody else in a particular case. And those are just some of the top level things when we talk about that. And then, of course, usually on top of that with tarot, the two basic readings that I'll do is like the one that I do every day here, which is kind of that psychological insight. And then I also do the path of balance. And sometimes if I'm working with somebody one-on-one and they want something more specific, I'll actually do a horoscope spread. And oftentimes the horoscope spread reflects everything that I've just read in the reading and gives me more detail. So I use cards for that. So yeah, like I said, this is a big reading that I do. It takes me 4 or 5 hours to prep it, which is why it's a little bit more of an expensive reading. But people who are kind of going through transitions, it ends up being a nice foundational big picture of the past and how things have come to be in the present. So it gives them you kind of have a solid map of like, okay, this is where I've been. these are what the tendencies are, these are what the challenges are, this is what helps me, this is what doesn't help me, this is what my strategy should be, like my human design strategy, which is one, but like with generators, the strategy is wait for the invitation. And I said, boy, is that a really bad thing? I'm bad at doing that. It's like, no, I want to go out there and I want to keep doing stuff. And it's just like, I find that the best things happen for me when I just let them happen to me and not try to make it happen, you know? And like I said, if you're a generator, which a lot of people are, you might find that that's the case. So anyway, I just wanted to talk a bit about that reading and the fact that I do that reading, and it is available on transitionlifecoaching.net. So if it's kind of thing that you feel, or you know somebody who feels that they are ready for that kind of a reading, I have a lot of good feedback on those readings from people. I used to do them a lot when I worked at Rockbox Annex. I did lots of them. I did tons of them. And I just think it's a really good, and it provides a lot of information, and in spite of the cost of it, it's actually a very cheap cost, because it's almost like you're getting like, a reading and a half like for free, because I try to keep it at just, kind of one compact price, but it's so much information, and it's literally the reading, like, and I always produce a written report with all of that too, and I can produce an audio report as well, like either face-to-face, or I can record it for people, and just figuring out what modicum I'm going to use to give that to people. But because there's Google Drive and there's different, I think there's other different softwares you can use to do that. But anyway, yeah. So I just want to let people know that I do that. I do offer it, and that is part of with my coaching system. That I feel like that's a good foundational thing for people if they're going into, especially if they're going into coaching, but people can do it as a standalone. It's not that people necessarily have to get into a regular coaching schedule to have it, but it is I just find it gives so much information, and a lot of times for people, it creates a lot of aha moments about, oh, this is why this is what I've been trying to do, and this is why I'm not doing, this is why it ain't working. It does provide a lot of that information. So, right up my alley. Thank you for sharing. Oh, you're welcome. Yes, it's like I said, I enjoy doing them for people. It really, because everybody's chart is so different, and you get to really see how unique people are when you do that, and what their unique set of challenges are. So, and again, my readings are not anything that I never share personal client information with anybody. That would be a big no-no. But I've had readings where I've done that. People look at me, they're like, I feel seen right now. And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you what the chart says. It's like with my readings. I tell you what the cards say. I had somebody criticize me on my channel for not making up story. You're not making up a story with this. I'm like, no, you're right. I don't make up stories. I just tell you what it says. Okay, let's get on to our reading, because I've talked about this. Okay, so our first card here that we have in the center of our reading is completion. Okay, look at that, the last puzzle piece. I like this one too. This is one, something is definitely, this is the world card, or the universe card. This is the last card in the tarot, and it's something that's taking up your time and energy is coming to an end. Okay, so, and the thing is about this card, it's different from, we were talking a little bit about the tower at the beginning of the reading, but this is not a tower moment. This is I have successfully finished this, and I can sit back and look at a job well done. And now I'm ready to, because you move from the world, if you look at the major arcana of the tarot as a cycle, it's like, okay, now you've reached the end of something, and now it's back to the Fool energy where you take a risk and start something new again. So there's a lot that's happening right now, and I do think a lot of the influences right now have to do with the way in which we are completing cycles. And that's probably why there's a lot of shakeups right now, because we're not going to be doing things the old way. We're going to be doing things the new way. And the inner feeling of which we're unaware, this is interesting. Morality. Now, this is the Queen of Clouds, or the Queen of Swords. And Queen of Swords in traditional decks, it can be just a very intellectual energy, can be a very perfectionist energy, very just the facts, please, that kind of a thing. But this is referred to as the morality card. And as you can see, the woman on this card, she looks kind of like shriveled, and she's dressed almost very puritanically, and the center of her almost looks like a cage, like a prison. And this is the way in which our judgments about ourselves and others end up caging us in. I have to do this way. I'm a bad person if I don't do it this way. I need to follow the script, and I'm not following the script. Especially if you're deciding you want to branch out and do something differently. The morality card is like it's that inner critic that's saying, well, you can't do it that way. You have to go get a regular job and drive there every day and do this or whatever. Or sometimes people who are in the middle of a divorce will say, oh, well, I failed at my marriage because I didn't do this. It's like, no, we all have things in life where we need to make changes and we need to do things differently. But a lot of times we just beat our head against the wall because we feel we have to do. And it's not just a matter of we're familiar with the same old way. We have a judgment in us that says, well, that's the way I have to do it if I'm a good person. But that seems to be something coming to an end. Yeah, because the external feeling we have is exhaustion. And this has to do with the way that we give ourselves safe and unnatural routines. Okay? And so or we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Because it's weird. Certainly when we want to talk about the morality of the culture that we live in, the morality is around working hard. And working hard means that you have to be doing something every single second. And if you're not doing something every single second, then you're lazy and shiftless, and you're taking advantage of people and this and that. And we have that kind of mentality about ourselves. And because it's very funny how I will see that with people where they'll be like, well, yeah, I'm in this particular situation. Oh, but I'm doing these 10 things. And so, like you have to justify being in a situation maybe where you need help, or maybe you're a little bit in crisis with something, or maybe financially. I was talking about that initially, the way that things are a bit difficult. Then you start beating yourself up that you're not working hard enough. It's that kind of energy that we're seeing here. But the idea is that this is a way of thinking that is coming to an end for a lot of people. If you want to look at astrologically, the Capricorn to Aquarius thing, right now Pluto is shifting, is in retrograde. So I think that's also part of it too. There's a lot of revisiting. It's not going to enter Capricorn again, I think, until September. But then it's only going to be there like for a month, and then it's going to go back towards Aquarius again. And it's going to be heading forward in Aquarius. I mean, there might be some retrogrades, but it's going to be in Aquarius for about 40 years. And Aquarius says the old, plodding along and the grind and all that kind of thing is not going to be the way of the future. And really, when we think about how much machines are going to be doing a lot of what we thought of as the jobs that a lot of people did, it makes sense. The future is going to be, we don't need to, maybe we should really use technology for what it's meant for at this point, which is to assist us so that we can open up and be more creative and do things differently and have different ideas about finances and economics and things. I mean, this is more of a global change, but I feel like this is how it may be affecting us individually. And it's funny, I just said this, right? We have the laziness card. This is the 9 of Cups, believe it or not. But there's a guy here who's sitting there like, looks like he's on a beach type thing with his pina colada, and, he's, and this is back here. Yeah, wow, 40 years, yes. It's going to be, basically, I'll tell you, it's the rest of my lifetime is definitely going to be Pluto in Aquarius. I forget what it was when I was born. What was Pluto when I was born? It was in Virgo when I was born. I had to think back for a minute. Yeah, I know, because it's been in Capricorn since 2008, so it's been a bit of a, I guess that is 16 years, isn't it? But this one, yeah, they're saying 40 years. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is literally what I'm just saying. This feeling that we are, like I said, when this card comes up, I don't think it's necessarily that we're being lazy, but that we are beating ourselves up for being lazy. Okay, I'm not doing enough. I'm not working hard. It's that morality thing. When I see these cards together, I'm saying, okay, yeah, it's not that you're being lazy. But it may be saying that there may be something spurring us to think about something differently. So the laziness may not be that you're not working hard enough. It may just be that there may be something lighting a fire under us to say, okay, here's a challenge. Time to think about something differently here. And the challenge, actually, the outcome here is the 2 of Pentacles, which is the moment-to-moment card. Okay, we see this the man here who is kind of jumping from rock to rock, and yeah, so the idea is, again, it sounds cliche, but it's about being in the present. And I always say that's cliche because when people say, well, just be present, I'm like, great, what does that mean? If you have certain deadlines or certain things that you have to meet, or certain, I don't know, bills that are due or different, different things that are happening where that there's some kind of a deadline coming up and you're like, okay, I have to meet this deadline. It's hard to stay in the present. But again, depending on where you are energetically, especially if you're somebody who's like a generator or a manifesting generator in human design, that is your best strategy, is to just say, okay, I have my intentions. I kind of know where I'm going, but I'm just gonna worry about what I'm doing right now, and then I'm gonna see where things go. Because you never know what's gonna happen during the day. I could have a plan for the whole day, and then suddenly my phone could blow up with, oh, okay, now I have a client reading in the afternoon. Now I have this. Now I have that. Things can change on a dime. And really, I feel like a lot of this is about embracing change, because we're not really good at that. We live in this realm of prediction, and where we like to know our ability to kind of look at the past and the future or look at time in that kind of a way. I was just watching something the other day about this. The fact that we're able to do that, it can help us predict things, but it's also the source of all of our anxiety. Okay. And I'm going to also pull a essential oil oracle card here, and our essential oracle is called respiratory. Okay, now I don't know, as I've often said with this deck, which is called it's by Lisa Powers, the Essential Oil Oracle. I don't know what oil brand or type of blend, because these are not necessarily blends I would see like with Young Living or something like that. But in any case, it's these are the ones that she uses. But the card that we have, the keyword we have up here is breath. And the trigger statement is I can't breathe. And the true statement is I open up to all possibility. You are ready to let go of suffering so that you can take in new possibilities. Release so you can receive. Okay. Good morning, JR. Popping in. Yeah, I know I'm going to be ending it in a couple of minutes here. So, but glad you could pop in for a few minutes. So that's the messages that we have today. I feel like, well, it's interesting because we have the completion card in the center of the deck, which says, okay, something's coming to an end. And we had it between morality and exhaustion, right? The idea that we are beating, that inner critic that's beating us up over, not doing it right, cracking the whip. You're lazy, you're this, you're that. And saying, no, it's time to live in the present. And this is saying, you want to clear all that space so that you can breathe. And it's because that's what this is about. It's about, okay, so that's done. That way of living is done, and that way of doing things is done. And the way to do things going forward is more about being present where you are. Because the present is really your point of power. That is the point at which you are able to, from where, we can evaluate the past, but then it's kind of like, okay, where we are now, what we did before ultimately is going to, that's whatever that is, that's done. So now it's, if we're looking towards the future, rather than speculating about outcomes, just stay where you are, because you know where you are right now. Okay, this is where your point of power is. This is where this is the place where you can make decisions, and where you can be open to the new information as it comes in, and then just kind of be able to adjust your path based on that. Now, of course, that's very, very general, and we all have some very specific circumstances that may be more challenging than others. I often feel like sometimes with these things that it's there are days when it's just they're hard things to overcome in the mind. Okay, because we are so programmed to do a certain way. If I say to you, don't worry that this is due, just stay in the present. And you're like, what, are you crazy? Of course I have to worry about this. I have to do something. I have to take an action, right? But sometimes it's just saying, like, just wait and see. Wait and see what's going to come of something, rather and try to stay present. Certainly at the base, what I often tell people is if you are in a space where you feel like you're in crisis and you can't, and you're just in the moment, like in a panic, like I have to do this right now. Shouldn't I worry? yeah, right. Well, yeah, and that's just it. And actually, worry does have a purpose. I feel like it's a survival thing, right? We have to worry, but sometimes I think we project that our situations are worse than what they are. And sometimes too, when we feel like a way we're doing things isn't working anymore, then it's like, okay, well now this is inspiring me to do something a new way. But also, like I said, it can just mean other opportunities and things are coming in. But a lot of times we panic and we kind of rush into doing this or doing that because, I have to do something right now. And it's not always a situation. I mean, obviously, if we're in the middle of a crisis, then you have to act quickly, right? But a lot of times, if you just kind of flow with what's going on, eventually what you need will come to you. And I found that month after month, like I said, doing things where I'm not really sure what my income is going to be every month. Usually at the beginning of the month, like right now, I will start to panic about it. And then usually by the next week, I've already seen where all the appointments have come in and where all the stuff has come in, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, there it is. But there's no way I could have predicted that on the first of the month, right? So your ability to predict is also the thing that causes you a tremendous amount of anxiety. So it seems like that's a reminder this morning. And also not to judge yourself so harshly, because we all, as things are changing, it's not like we failed or something's our fault. It's just, as things change, it's like, okay, well then we just operate from the point of the present and then see how we're going to change. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. Like I said, people who are interested in the life path, I mean, I do talk about it on transitionlifecoaching.net. I do have and I think the full description of it as well. And anybody can email me to transitionlifecoaching22@gmail.com. And I can certainly answer any questions that people might have about that as well. And you're welcome. And you're welcome. It was so good to see you guys on here today. Look forward to having this little crew in the morning. It's really nice. And of course, I will be here tomorrow morning. So all of you have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.